Hey friends, welcome back to the channel. So it is a very gross, rainy day outside today. So instead of tackling an outdoor project like Dirk's currently doing, I'm going to go ahead and get my artistic juices flowing and show y'all what I like to do each year for our strawberry garden. If you've thought about growing strawberries or if you've already got strawberries planted, this is a great little trick to keep the birds away from your strawberries. Dirk learned it, I think he found it on Pinterest a couple years back, and he asked me last year if I could go ahead and paint up some rocks for him to look like strawberries to use as decoys for the birds. So that's what we're going to be doing today. Your supplies that you need are very minimal. You just want some red paint, some black paint, and a little bit of green paint. And it doesn't really matter what kind of paint you get. I just use my acrylic-based paint that I use for my paintings because I already have it on hand. And I prefer acrylic to oil just because it tends to dry a whole lot faster. But all you need is some paint. It doesn't have to be fancy. It doesn't have to be expensive. Same thing with your paint brushes. And then other than that, all you need is rocks. And we've got a bunch of gravel out in the driveway, so I just pick a bunch of, some varying sizes, shapes. Doesn't really matter. Doesn't matter what the shape is, really. But that's all you need to get started. So let's get to painting. You'll see I also have just some coffee filters here. Of course, since I do paint regularly, I do have the plastic palettes that I can put my paint on. However, coffee filters are great because it's easy cleanup, easy throwaway, and they're so cheap. Y'all, if you haven't looked at some of the hacks that you can use coffee filters for, some of the different things you can use them for, I highly recommend them because they're so cheap. You can get so many in a pack, and they're great for a lot more than just filtering out your coffee, folks. So I'm just going to go ahead and get some paint poured out here. We'll start with the red. Go ahead and get some green and black for when we need it. Alright, and like you see, the paint brushes, nothing to them really. I like to use expensive, really fancy brushes when I do most of my artwork on canvas, but, to be honest with you, I usually just end up with cheap brushes anyway because I'm horrible at following through with cleaning them, and they usually get crusted and I have to throw them away anyway, so I don't really like to spend a lot of money on brushes just because my cleaning habits are not that great with them. Alright, so I've got my little station set up. I'm ready to get painting. And when you start to do this, it doesn't have to be an artistic masterpiece. You just want the rocks to resemble enough of like a strawberry so that the birds, when they go to try to peck them, they're not going to be able to eat the strawberry because, hey, it's a rock. So we have our strawberry rocks painted, and I just realized that last year I painted them with white spots, and this year I guess I wanted to go with black spots. So either will work. The birds aren't going to notice a difference, but you can see I didn't take a lot of time to try to get the paint perfect, anything like that. I spent quite a bit of time last year planting. I keep wanting to say planted. Painting them. And you can kind of see from last year's I only did one side of them, and I did the white spots, but they get dirty, and some of the paint ends up fading. So they don't have to look perfect, but now I've got more to add to our strawberry patch this year. I know I painted more than that last year, so I don't really know. I'm sure a lot of them ended up just being buried down in the dirt. But they work as a great decoy for birds. But you have to keep this in mind that if you're going to paint your strawberries to put in the garden, you want to put them out there before the strawberries actually start growing for the year. So once the weather gets warmer and you see your plants are coming to and you're anticipating strawberries to start popping on, you want to go ahead and put your rocks in the garden then. That way the birds can start trying to get them, trying to get the decoys. And once they realize that, hey, that's not a strawberry, that's a rock, that's going to help deter them from coming back once your strawberries actually are growing. And like I said, Dirk found that. I think he found it on Pinterest and tried it for the first time last year, and it seemed to work great. One thing I will say, that, you know, it might be a decoy for the birds and it might keep the birds away from eating your actual strawberries, does not work on chipmunks. We have a couple of chipmunks usually that hang out around here during the summertime. I'm sure I'll get them on video later in the year. They always come around. I went out several times last year to pick strawberries, and there'd be the cutest little bite just taken out of a piece of the strawberry. And I saw Henry the chipmunk over there several times, so I know he was the culprit. But in terms of birds, they seem to work for us. And we have an issue with where the strawberries are planted. It's right around that little shed. Well, those little wild finches, it never fails. They make nests up in the trusses of that shed. No matter what we do to try to block it to keep them out, they always find a way in. So we do have a very heavy small bird population around our strawberry bed, and we noticed great results with the rocks last year. So I'm going to let my rocks dry, and then I'll add them to the jar with last year's collection, and hopefully here in the next month or so I'll be able to get them put out in the garden, and I'll show you what it looks like then. It's funny, last year one of our friends was over and asked if she could take a strawberry, and we're like, well, I don't know if I have any ripe ones yet. And she had actually seen one of the rocks from afar, so it was good enough to pose as a strawberry. It was pretty funny. But hopefully, if you try this out, hopefully you'll have success with it. You'll have luck. And let us know if there's anything that y'all do to help keep birds, pests, chipmunks away. I know, I mean, they're so small, aside from leaving bait out, which I don't want to do around our garden. There's not really much we can do about those that I've learned. But if y'all have tips, tricks, please let us know. And if you try out the rock trick, let us know how it works for you. And until next time, friends, keep on keeping on.